following program is a peer-to-peer advice show and does not diagnose mental health conditions. If you're seeking social services, please call or text 211 or go to 211.ca. Hello, listeners around the world on radio, streaming, and podcast services. This is It's Not Therapy. I'm Liana, and I am not a therapist, but I am your source for navigating the madness of mental health using my top 10 sayings for going good crazy. This week, I'm doing another list. I haven't done a 10 list. We'll say top 10 because that's ranking and that's too hard. But I think it's time to do a list. And the topic, is why modern politics is terrible for our mental health. And you can thank a guy coming out of my local Canadian Tire. Well, I was there to buy cleaning products for this. This guy was wearing a shirt that had a word that rhymes with duck with a maple leaf instead of the U in duck. Directed it Mark Carney. That's Canada's Prime Minister for those who don't live here. So, duck, maple leaf Carney, without the D. 2 letters after, yeah. At a hardware store. And by the look on this guy's face, he wanted people to notice that he was saying, Duck Carney, on his chest. He was stomping out of the store, scowling, chest puffed. He looked like an angry Kenny Rogers. Okay, like Ted DiBiase from wrestling in his biggest heel moments, right? Now, I reference this guy's appearance because I don't want you thinking he was this, stereotypical angry young man. Based on data, the Gen X cohort of men 55 to 64, where, maybe the guy was in that. That's my guess. Anyway, that demographic, they are the most conservative demographic out there. So it's not like this dude is some sort of persecuted minority. Though I'm sure he feels persecuted, hence him out looking for a fight on a Saturday afternoon with anyone but those overly aggressive people that follow you around the stores trying to talk to you into another credit card. That was a joke. Please don't pick fights with those people. Yeah. It just really strikes me whenever I see these profanity-laced political statements. Because, first of all, very political people like that type, are the first people to invoke, there are children, think of the children, as a reason something's offensive and therefore other people shouldn't be allowed to do it. But also, okay, come on, Mark Carney has been prime minister for, you can count it in weeks. And these guys already have shirts? Come on. That's not civic participation based on issues. That strikes me as a hatred of anybody with a particular political identity. It was Duck Trudeau before it was Duck Carney. The word is not duck. Okay. Now, Gen Z men tend to get blamed in media for this sort of behavior. Again, the data doesn't bear that out. And I'm going to be really clear about this. Gen Z men are about as politically polarized as Gen X women, which are consistently split around 50-50 on various issues, the contentious issues, give or take a few points. Gen Z women, on the other hand, Gen Z women, as opposed to Gen Z men, are strongly polarized to the left. And the reason might be obvious, attacks on reproductive freedom. But no matter who you are, there are pro and anti-social ways to express your pro or anti-political opinions. And if you're just using politics to pick fights, you can stop listening to this show now because it's not for you. It, would help you to see why it's not working, but those particular people, they're not in a listening mood. If you want to be effective in promoting your cause, though, you will want to stay tuned. Similarly, if something's bothering you about the way politics is discussed, you may find words to explain where you're coming from in this episode. Or you might find something useful in more general terms of being persuasive in conversations. Either way, I'm doing this because a lot of clients are really stressed about politics, and you feel it in the air. Even though Canada's through our election cycle, there's still everything else. So, without further ado, here are 10 ways modern politics are really bad for our mental health, starting with the reason inspired by the Mark Carney fan at the Canadian Tire. Number 10, people are way too aggressive. Shirt guy is evidence that this isn't just a problem online, and it isn't just drunk uncles at dinner tables. There's been a stark increase in anti-Semitic and anti-Islamic activity because of a war happening thousands of miles away. Celebrities are getting harassed for wanting to stay out of political debates, as if a singer's opinion on global geopolitics is in any way really useful. I know I'm relieved that this year's Eurovision, yes, I'm planning on watching Eurovision. I'm super excited about it, especially because it's not the politicized dumpster fire that last year's was, yet. They've had stuff, but it hasn't hit that fever pitch. But other issues, other things, those are still running really hot. And if you can't talk about something, especially something that's important to you, without exploding, especially if you're out there actively looking for a fight the way Canadian Tire Angry Man was, that's a sign of a deeper problem that might need professional help. And let's face it, being around those people who are actively looking to fight, that's exhausting, if not downright scary. So it's not good for anyone. Someone has to live with that guy in the Duck Carney t-shirt. And that's what he's like in public. Even if people don't actively pick fights, I think people are going, well, that's an extreme thing. And you're starting to think of all the other things that were lower than that threshold. Don't worry. This is just number 10, right? Because even if people aren't actively picking fights, they can get a different kind of aggressive. They can fight dirty in fights. And it often manifests as being too unyielding or too personal. And I'll get to those after the break. Do you have a story you think would be good for the show? Are you interested in sponsoring the show? Liana at nottherapyshow.com. Nottherapyshow.com is the website, at nottherapyshow on social media. Be back after this. How modern politics is bad for our mental health. The following program is a peer-to-peer advice show and does not diagnose mental health conditions. If you're seeking social services, please call or text 211 or go to 211.ca. We're back in It's Not Therapy. I'm still Liana Kersner. I'm still not a therapist. We're still talking about 10 things that are making politics terrible for our mental health. Number 10 was people being too aggressive. Now, numbers 9 and 8 are closely connected, but they're not quite the same thing. All of these are connected, but number 9 is people engaging in black or white thinking. Number 8 is people getting way too personal. And it's not a personal appeal based on someone's good nature, right? It's somebody making personal attacks. So let's start with black or white thinking. The idea that someone or something is totally good or totally bad with no nuance. And there's a brilliant example of this that doesn't involve, well, it's adjacent to something dicey, but the issue itself is not dicey. So yay. Protesters are vandalizing buildings at Columbia University again. Yay! This time, Butler Library. But at least this time they have clear demands. They want the Butler Library renamed because its namesake, Nicholas Murray Butler, was, as they said, a Nazi sympathizer. Now, I looked this up. I'm one of those people that even if I don't agree with someone, I look it up. It's like, what is this? There's a grain of truth to it. But like I said, there's a reason I'm using this as an example of black or white thinking. Nicholas Murray Butler was the president of Columbia University for 43 years. 43 years. Somebody makes a lot of decisions and has a lot of opinions, right? Starting in 1902. That's right, 1902. 1901, if you count his tenure as just acting president. Now, Nicholas Murray Butler was instrumental in creating the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, and he was a Nobel Peace Prize recipient. he was also privately pretty anti-Semitic, as many people of the time were, and did refuse to condemn a lot of what was going on in Europe with the Nazis until after Kristallnacht. Again, unfortunately, like a lot of people at that time. In 1936, though, he expelled a class president for leading an anti-Nazi protest on campus, which the president of that class got expelled for leading an anti-Nazi protest, right? That's hardcore. And it shows it's like his admiration for Mussolini was showing through there. Yes, that's true too. What the student protesters in condemning Nicholas Murray Butler failed to factor in, though, was that Nicholas Murray Butler completely changed his mind after Kristallnacht in November of 1938. I think it was November 9th into November 10th, 1938. After that, he went all the other way. He expelled anyone who opposed, U.S. intervention in World War II. Now, I mentioned that he won the Nobel Peace Prize, right? Well, he did that for his work. He won the Nobel Peace Prize for his work establishing the Permanent Court of International Justice, which was the precursor to the International Court of Justice. You probably know it better as The Hague. And that's the body these student protesters are ultimately appealing to regarding their claims of genocide against Israel. And this is why I'm saying this is an excellent example of black or white thinking regarding politics. Maybe if they're giving him no points for anything he did right, establishing this body so that because the ICJ, the International Court of Justice, that goes after entire countries. So their Israel is genocide thing. Yeah, okay, Israel's not a member. The U.S. isn't even a member of the ICJ. But the ICC, its sister court, that can prosecute individuals. And that's what led to the warrants for Benjamin Netanyahu and Noam Gallant. So, maybe if these protesters are giving Nicholas Murray Butler no points for that, that's affecting their ability to be terribly persuasive, right? Not only do they not have a balanced perspective, and they don't have a balanced perspective of a guy who, 1902, this is stuff that happened in the 1930s. It's 90 years ago, a little less, okay? Okay. Maybe if they don't have a balanced perspective on that, can you question their judgment on other things? Yes, of course you can, right? But it's also, nobody wants to be around someone who has that kind of black or white thinking. Ironically, Nicholas Butler's biggest cautionary tale is that he himself was too black or white in his thinking himself. Now I'm expelling you for being against the Nazis. No, now I'm expelling you for being not enough against the Nazis, right? If you weren't with him, you were against him, even when he completely changed his mind. And, his admiration for fascists is not strange in that regard. He had a pretty authoritarian attitude. But that comes out when you only look at the bad someone's done, as opposed to factoring the good and the bad. Never mind looking back at the opinions, from the 1930s regarding Jewish people and indigenous people and black people, Mexicans, basically anyone who didn't count under Manifest Destiny. These popular opinions of the time are awful based on modern sensibilities. But first of all, in my opinion, the desire to erase these men from our modern awareness doesn't solve the problem of false certainty and stereotyping. These are useful examples to learn from. But also, it doesn't help our individual mental health. Black or white thinking gets turned inward too much. Instead of judging things and people as, okay, did some good things, did some bad things, it's bad thing equals bad person. Good things will never be enough to cancel out that list of bad things. And that thinking tends to get turned on ourselves when we make mistakes. You know, never mind, people normally don't want to talk to someone who can't see the slightest bit of humanity in the people who don't agree with them. And that's number 8, right? Let's move on to number 8. I had other things, but time. Okay. If you really care about a cause, you'll stick to your cause, not your assumptions about other people's reasoning for disagreeing with you. That's when number 8 comes in, getting too personal. Right off the top, you lose your ability to persuade when you get personally nasty. And I know I called out the Colombia protesters in that last example, but those tactics go both ways on the Gaza thing. You know, being a Jewish person that doesn't think the Conservative Party of Canada is the only good option isn't really fun right now. It's kind of lonely. I just stay out of it because, hey, no one should be required to vote a certain way because of their religion and stuff going on there. And you notice I said, I'm just shutting up. I'm staying out of it. And that's what happens when you get that personal, you know, as well as being very black or white, you're with us or against us. People don't want to talk to the issue and they don't want to talk to you. And usually on issues like this that get so polarized, it's not just one side doing it. Both general sides, and I hate it being pro, I hate it being against, because even that black or white throws away the good personal part. Why someone, an individual, thinks the way they do. And if everybody's thinking independently, everybody should have a somewhat different reason for that, right? But that's not what you're seeing. You're seeing very clear, pro against talking points that are eerily similar to each other. And if you don't check every box, you're just a bad person, right? Similarly, a lot of the tactics on the debate on transgender people have gotten deeply personal and really, really nasty. The people who are very afraid of trans activism, when you talk to them, it's not about the issue so much as bad experiences they've had with somebody, usually online, right? And most trans people, and I tell these people this, and they don't believe it because they have to take my word for it, as opposed to a startling and hurtful experience they had themselves. Most trans people just want to live their lives without obsessing about what bathroom they use. Now, I acknowledge that you wouldn't know that from the loudest trans activists online. And I'll tell you, I truly believe that a lot of these activists are mostly well-meaning, even though they hate me now, because I wouldn't say Harry Potter is immediately, anybody who likes Harry Potter immediately hates trans people and want them to die. No, I won't sign on to that. I won't. No, that's black or white thinking and way too personal, and it's really not helping. And that's the point. It's not helping, right? Being trans, just because somebody's trans doesn't mean they should have to be perfect. Nobody can be perfect. That's not fair, right? When you're speaking only for yourself, when it's just, this is me, I'm just, speaking my mind, have at it, right? But when you call yourself an activist or an advocate, you're not just speaking for yourself anymore. Your behavior reflects on the people you're advocating for. So when you do good, it's good. When you start name-calling and personally attacking people and making negative assumptions with no facts and evidence, that hurts the people you claim you're trying to help. If I gave more examples on the Harry Potter thing of some of the petty gutters the trans debate has gone into, all around, right? Nobody's hands are clean on this one. Some of these petty gutter moments, they won't even make sense because they never made sense. What we're hung up on regarding trans people, the core of it is something really tender. That gender is the only identity characteristic that we still consider acceptable to segregate people on. Because of that, people have very strong feelings about it. People may feel very connected to their race. People may feel very connected to religion. But outside of religious marriage, we don't segregate based on those things like we used to. We do still separate based on gender. We use different bathrooms. We use different change rooms, so on and so forth, right? And people have turned public bathrooms, something that, it started as for men only and was designed to cut down on gay sex and drug use. That's why they're saloon door style stalls, so you could see how many feet are under that stall. Yep. But then it turned into a question of modesty, right? It was unladylike to use the facilities around men, right? That's morphed into this retroactive issue of safety. And the thing about the whole safety argument, we need safe spaces for women to be safe from men. Statistically, the most dangerous place for a woman regarding abuse by a man is her own home. That's where the vast majority of these assaults happen. But that's because we have single-sex spaces. Ladies, where do you think trans women were using the bathroom before this all became a thing? The ladies' room. It was working. There was no uptick in public assaults. I get why people are uncomfortable with the pace of change on this issue. I get it. This is deeply sensitive. It's deeply personal. Using the bathroom, you have to remove clothing, so it's vulnerable, it's personal, and the emotional overrides intellect. I also get that the whole issue of trans women and sports scholarships, trans women in competitive sports, even youth transition. These are personal things, and I'll get to the scare tactics later. It's gonna take time to work through, especially the sports stuff. But can we please stop harassing people over where they pee and sometimes poop? This isn't some, not yet developed country where women have to use the bathroom in a dark field and so they're in danger. These are brightly lit, very public places. And this jump to harm and safety, I'm getting ahead of myself on this one, but seriously, bathroom harassment isn't good for anyone's mental health. I'd like to not feel the need to escort my trans lady friends to the washroom in case they have a problem now. Even though it hasn't gotten as bad in Canada, you're always on guard. You're hypervigilant, and that's not good. Hypervigilance is a PTSD symptom for a reason, right? Now, just because you had that doesn't mean you have PTSD. It's only one of the 4 pillars, but yeah. Now, you can think someone with a different opinion than you on an issue is making a bad choice. I do all the time, right? But jumping to assuming that these people are bad people based on a single issue or just a handful of issues, well, one, you're probably wrong. Usually, I find with this particular issue, yeah, there are some bad actors out there, absolutely. But it's more fear, it's more not being able to ask questions, it's more not understanding than anything else. And if you're going to break off friendships, if you're going to automatically decide that someone is quote unquote unsafe, if you're going to be that deeply personal over not even individual trans issues, but products that are byproducts of J.K. Rowling, who has terrible opinions on trans people. Like I said, she's making really bad choices there, right? But assuming someone wishes you harm because they play a Harry Potter video game that Hogwarts Legacy even has a transgender character in it, but no, it became this big thing. That's getting too personal. It's not going to do great things for your relationships. And it speaks to deeper issues with someone's, frankly, ability to trust. And, you know, those trust issues probably come from a very, very real place. But people aren't going to stick around for very long if you are constantly testing them, if you are constantly making them give up things that, you know, is just nostalgia for the movies when they've never even touched a book. If you're constantly making them prove themselves to you, rightly or wrongly, they have the choice to not want to be around you anymore. And isolation isn't good. Don't just slam that personal hand grenade into things. Talk to them. Listen to their reasons. People are persuaded by people who listen. And on that note, let's take a break, come back, talk about that idea of harm and safety, right? Because these are big, big triggers. And they're weaponized by modern discourse. Questions, comments, concerns, Liana at nottherapyshow.com. Nottherapyshow.com is the website, at nottherapyshow on Twitter, Instagram, and Threads. When we come back, more on why politics is so bad for our mental health. We'll see how many we get through after this on It's Not Therapy. The following program is a peer-to-peer advice show and does not diagnose mental health conditions. If you're seeking social services, please call or text 211 or go to 211.ca. We're back in It's Not Therapy. I'm still Liana Kersner. I'm still not a therapist. I'm still talking about why modern politics is having such a terrible impact on our mental health. Top 10 list. Well, 10 list. You'll have a different reasons, probably. It's impossible to get them all in. But number 10 was people are too aggressive. Number 9, people engage in black and white thinking. Number 8, it gets too personal, and that personal is never positive. And number 7 is sort of a tie into that, the whole harm and safety thing. A lot of political rhetoric, the stuff that comes out of the actual political parties, uses either things that prey on your disgust or things that prey on your fear, especially fear for your physical safety, your well-being, and the well-being of your family, which is why they tend to leverage women and kids, right? And this it's like inducing trauma in people when you stumble across an image from a war zone and it's, you know, dismembered bodies, dead children. You're not going to stop and diligently research whether it's a modern clip. And a lot of these, they're from like 2012, or they're not even from the country that they've identified, but they know people are not going to check. They know they're just going to be disturbed and walk away or run away and feel bad about it and just want it to stop. And people don't act in their best interests when they're in that state. We know this. That's why the propagandists use it, right? The idea, you know, it's impossible to not feel empathy, you know, unless you got some pretty serious disorders, for images or especially video of starving and injured children. It's heartbreaking. The suffering is real. The harm is real. And we get into do something thinking when those buttons are pushed. You hear it whenever somebody talks about mutilation of body parts, rather intimate body parts when it comes to trans kids. You know, you see the most dire, awful images, and they're on social media. You're not planning to see them. They take you by surprise. And again, you're so horrified. You don't decide to research the origin of these images. Heck, most people wouldn't even look into this idea that a man who was president at Colombia starting at 1902 was a Nazi sympathizer. They probably just wouldn't care. No skin off their nose. Unless, of course, you know, you're a Jewish person. It's like, wait, am I giving my money to an anti-Semite institution? Right? It's that harm and safety thing, right? And when you trigger that button, the stay in the cave brain activates. Meaning we're just going to stay here and we're going to do nothing. We're going to withdraw everything. We're going to be very small and quiet and not venture out, because venturing out is dangerous. And when they have put you in that state, when you are off the board, they don't have to convince you anymore. That's why they do it. It's a suppression tactic of the highest order. And it works because it hijacks our brain. We can't help it. And overriding that is an exhausting process. And it's everywhere. It's unending. And that's number 6. The number 6 reason why modern politics is so bad for our mental health. It's freaking everywhere. You can't watch an award show. You can't watch something frivolous. You can't turn on basic entertainment without, you know, some reference to modern day stuff. Now, with the exception of Star Wars, because really, you know, Star Wars has always been a franchise that involved the destruction of entire planets. So their reference to genocide predate this. But everything's trying to be relevant. Everything's trying to be, you know, reflective of our times. And I get why. I get that people who make art want to say something meaningful with that art. But people need to be able to step away from it, or at least have it be done in a way that's arm's length. It's very difficult to avoid news with the world push notifications on our computers, on our phones. It's very difficult to avoid it when entire friend groups are based around having the right opinions about certain topics. And it is not good for our brains. It doesn't allow us to hear ourselves think. The fear of cancellation is in people who have never personally had a bad experience. Everything is so loud, they're afraid to even try. And not only is that bad for the individual, it's bad for society. And how we get out of it, I'm not sure. That's a topic for another time. And, you know, it doesn't just get us when we're going out into the world or through our phones. It gets us in our families as well, right? Family gatherings are no longer safe spaces. And that's number 5 of why modern politics is so bad for our mental health. There was always that thing about the loudmouth uncle, but it's gotten quite bad. I don't know of very many people who don't dread family gatherings because something's gonna come up. And I really think that family gatherings should be We don't talk politics. I don't care what it is. We don't talk politics. And anybody who does talk politics will be asked to leave, no questions asked. Because you never know, right? You don't know. And that's okay. That person is still that person, right? But what if they're not? I hear people saying, okay, let's jump right into number 4. Okay? The number 4 reason for why politics are so bad for our mental health is that people seem to be changing right in front of our eyes right now, right? And I don't just mean the gender thing. No. People are, I'm still trying to figure out the difference between anarcho-communism and anarcho-capitalism. I think I know it, but I'm like, it's anarchy, but then there's a system of government. How does that work? I'm sure people want to explain it to me, but right now, I don't really care. The point is, suddenly someone comes home with these ideas, and grandma's a fascist, right? It's like all of us fascist. And the problem with this is not just the change. We all know the cliche, the only constant in life is change. Change happens. It happens to everyone. You just have to accept it. All right, fine. But there needs to be time to adjust. There does. And unfortunately, sometimes people get so in these rabbit holes that you lose them. I've lost a few friends and family members where it wasn't even necessarily them. It was a partner's very strong opinions on politics that they felt like they had to back. And it wasn't the opinion. It's that the person wouldn't be quiet about it. And they started pontificating about, medical stuff. And I'm getting ahead of myself there as well. But everybody has strong views. I have strong views, right? But I can explain the other side, at least to an extent, and I'm constantly in the process of learning. But when I'm there to just see people in a family that I haven't seen in a year, I want to know how they're doing. I want to know how their kids are doing. I want to know what TV shows they're watching, what music they like, and even that can be charged. Poor Chapel Roan. But, sometimes people just go places we can't follow. And that's extremely painful, especially when it comes to something, again, as deeply personal as something like a vaccine. If you have a family member who had measles before the latest outbreak, well, this outbreak as well. If you've got an immunocompromised child or a child too young to get vaccines and, they're affected by that, that's going to make somebody feel very strongly. If somebody who survived polio, then it's not academic. And things like that, literal matters of real life and death, not the simulated stuff I talked about in number 7, that can lead to breaks in relationships. Maybe temporarily, but everybody has a breaking point. And when people are really radicalized like that, it takes a huge amount of patience and compassion and understanding and, yes, pain to de-indoctrinate them. And that can't even happen until they want it to be. People in those places are looking for something, and it's easy to blame yourself. It's not always your fault, especially as a parent. Sometimes it is. And then what, right? And I do think that, again, you don't have to agree, but listening helps everyone, and unless they start getting abusive, you can't set boundaries. But this is a way And this is not online nonsense. This stuff, family gatherings that end in tears or people angrily storming out, people being pressured to take sides, people taking sides and ganging up on someone in the family. This all happens because modern political propaganda wants it to happen. It's designed to create these fractures. And we can't do anything about that. All we can do is work on our communication and our other bonds and hope these are strong enough to see through our political disagreements. And let me tell you, the friends and family I've lost to this stuff, it wasn't their political opinions. Even it wasn't racism. It wasn't. It was things like being unable to admit they were wrong, even on a particular fact, when it was right in front of them. It was, well, how am I supposed to know that? Or that's not important. It's like, if it's right, it's right. If it's wrong, it's wrong. We can talk about importance later, but can you please just acknowledge the fact? No. Or they started name calling, or they started gaslighting. And that's when it stops being about politics and starts being about abusive tactics. And unfortunately, there's a lot of that in modern political discourse. And that's, let me take a break before we get to that. Questions, comments, concerns. I'm sure there will be some on this show. Liana at Not Therapy Show. Not Therapy Show is the website. At Not Therapy Show is social media. Again, any of the examples I bring up on the show, you'll notice I was heavy off the top and I'm doing less and less now. Well, that's because I know that people are going to get distracted by those. And that's sort of the point. If you can't hear politics without seeing red, you're that guy, that indicates a deeper instability or dysregulation with mental health. But we'll be back after the break on It's Not Therapy.
The following program is a peer-to-peer advice show and does not diagnose mental health conditions. If you're seeking social services, please call or text 211 or go to 211.ca.
We're back in It's Not Therapy. I'm still Liana Kersner. I'm still not a therapist. We are still talking why modern politics is affecting our mental health so badly. So number 10, people are too aggressive. Number 9, black or white thinking. Number 8, it gets too personal, and that's never positive. Number 7, the harm and safety triggers. Number 6, it's unending and it's everywhere. Number 5, family gatherings are no longer safe spaces. Number 4, a loved one can change seemingly suddenly and there's no time to adjust. And that brings it to number 3. And number 3, this was when I didn't quite know where to stick the pin in it. I settled on there's nowhere that's really trusted to explain these issues without offering opinion. We are having a crisis in journalism. And it's tough to be a journalist, even with mental health reporting right now. I'm talking about Gaza and trans rights because it's interconnected. Now, obviously, I still have my own experiences. I still have a bias. No one is immune to that. But having a bias and flat out, spiking stories that don't, coincide with a particular worldview. The big newsrooms are having a crisis right now. And the sheer amount of information out there is boggling. And at the same time, newspapers and newsrooms have done away with the clear separation between reporting and commentary, because commentary online gets more clicks. That's one of the reasons they've done it. Sometimes I only find out about stories through someone's political column. Nicholas Kristof and David Brooks at the New York Times are still good that way. Now, David Brooks is not nearly as controversial, but there's even a reference to that in the Thunderbolts movie. Oh my God, I laughed. But, Nicholas Kristof, he's opining, and that's his job. So I have to kind of look things up if I'm curious. You got to take things with a grain of salt. And you don't know, oh, is this sugar? Is it salt? Is this cyanide? Like, what is this? Oh, it's white pepper. Okay. It's overwhelming. It's just sheerly overwhelming. And people just want the facts. And we live in a world where the facts aren't even in agreement. We live in a world of alternative facts. And that leaves me to number 2, which I've already sort of touched on, but education and medicine have become an intense focus on politics. When the vaccines we put in our body, when the stuff that we put in kids' minds, everything is politicized. And, institutional capture is in mainstream parlance. Where the heck do we go from there? It's so stressful. It's so confusing. It can make you feel so helpless. And again, that all triggers that stay in the cave brain. Do nothing, stay small and quiet, the threat will pass. But with these sorts of issues, you do have to make a choice, right? Not doing something is as meaningful a choice as doing something. A lot of people, I'm just not going to vote because I'm not inspired. Well, that's a choice, but then you have to live with the consequences alongside everybody who did vote. But the thing is, doing nothing is certain. Doing nothing means you don't actively do something, and that sounds like so obvious. But when we're dealing with issues of crippling uncertainty, it's an important distinction, and that is the number one reason that modern political stuff is so bad for our mental health. The uncertainty. I mean, the tariff yo-yo is the biggest example of that, but there are other things. We don't know. These are very tumultuous times, and uncertainty is the hardest thing to deal with because you can't do anything about it. You have to control what you can control and focus on that, because the actual thing you're uncertain about, you can't just force it to be certain. It's a process, and no one has unlimited patience. No one has limited distress tolerance. All we can do is be as gentle to ourselves as we possibly can. And the clock is not being gentle to me. So I gotta wrap. Questions, comments, concerns, Liana at nottherapyshow.com, nottherapyshow.com, at nottherapyshow. Don't message me just to fight about political issues. You've missed the point of this show. If that's what you want to do. I don't agree with you on Gaza. I don't care. It wasn't about that. It was about black and white thinking. Okay? That crazy hurts you. And you know what I'm going to say? Your crazy is only a problem if it hurts you. Talk next time.